So in this video, I really want to have a quick overview of what the User Experience Virtualization, or UEV, actually does and how it fits into the whole desktop virtualization space. Typically when we think about the user experience, there's really three layers, and we have virtualization at each of these layers to really enable the new types of scenarios we're seeing today. If you look at today's IT organization, they need to really facilitate these new users that have really powerful technologies at home that expect to be able to do their jobs on any device, be it a Windows device, a slate device, even mobile phones. And many times these devices cannot run Windows applications natively. So there needs to be ways to not just present their data, their settings and their apps, but also an entire operating system. So if you kind of think at the lowest level first, I mean, you have the operating system. And there are various solutions to really virtualize the operating system. And from a user perspective, we're really thinking of a virtual desktop infrastructure or session virtualization. So when you think VDI, the solution is essentially, so if we go off this way to VDI, we have some kind of hypervisor like Hyper-V running lots and lots of virtual machines. And every user effectively connects in to their own client operating system, running Windows 7, Windows 8, whatever. So they have their own operating system environment. So that's kind of the VDI, isolation and operating system level. Then there's kind of the session virtualization, sort of remote desktop services. And here we have a server operating system and each user has a session within that shared server operating system. So to the user it looks the same start screen or the start menu, taskbar, system tray. It looks exactly the same, but the isolation this time is at a session level. They're sharing an operating system. But for many sort of task-based workers who are not power users, don't need to customize the operating system, reboot, session virtualization works just great, whereas VDI is more those power users, developers, people who need to customize the OS and need that greater degree of isolation. So we can provide the operating system and then deliver it to the users using sort of remote desktop protocol. So looking down as the user, so there's the operating system, and then we need the applications themselves. So then we have the kind of apps layer. And again, there's different ways to get the applications to the user. Now, if this is an operating system that's maybe dynamically created when the user logs in, like a VDI environment, or even session virtualization where there's so many different users using it who want different applications, I can't locally install the operating system, the applications into the OS. There's too many different apps needed. I can't possibly, it'll be too fat, it'll be very bogged down, too hard to manage. So we virtualize the applications. So one way we virtualize the applications is app-v. So with app-v, the application installation is abstracted from the underlying operating system. The app is still running on the OS, be it the VDI client VM or the server, but there's no installation done for the actual operating system. It's abstracted away, but it's still using those local resources. The other option is, again, it's similar to this remote desktop, but remote applications. So this time it's using remote app. So now the application is actually running on a remote server. It's not running locally on my OS anymore, but the application is running on that remote server and it sends me the window for that application. So it looks to me like it's running locally. It's seamlessly integrated with my local desktop, but in actual fact all the resource, the computation is done on a remote server. So different ways to get the applications to me. And then there's obviously the user environment itself. And really what that means is it's kind of the settings and the data. And data there's been a great solution for. If you think folder redirection, so my documents, app data, favorites, all these different areas we can redirect as part of the user's profile, I can redirect off to sort of a network file share. So my documents actually points over there. We have client-side caching, so offline files, so that even though my documents is redirected over here, if I'm disconnected from the network, my data is still available to me. And we want to redirect as much of the profile as possible. We don't want the profile big, we want it very, very small, all the data redirected out using sort of folder redirection. So we just say folder redirection. So that's great. So the user's got the operating system, they've got their apps using AppV or remote app. Their data is all available no matter where they go because it just synchronizes down, pulls down from that network location. Then there's the rest of it, sort of the NTUs.dat, the registry area, the profile. And I present on this a lot. And whenever we talk about all these other components, VDI, the RDS, remote app, AppV, folder redirection, you can say that very, very confidently, yes, great solution. And then when you talk about the settings, the rest of the profile, well, our solution has always been roaming profiles. So we sort of come over to here, and it's roaming profiles. And you kind of be a little bit embarrassed. You might try and say it as you cough, roaming profiles, that's our solution. Moving on to something else. Because it's really fairly hard to actually use in any kind of large enterprise. There's a lot of problems associated with it. It basically treats the entire profile as one big blob. It can synchronize it when you log on, when you log off. Windows 7 does some background synchronization, but it's still very cumbersome. And it's just not a popular solution. So we've always been very weak on this settings side, which is a huge part of the user experience. If you think, yes, the data is important, but my ease of use settings, my desktop configuration, and all my application configurations, they're a huge part of what my experience is. And so what user experience virtualization is it's a replacement for this roaming profiles. So in place now we have user experience virtualization, or UEV. And that's really what I want to focus on. Let's take this out. So if I think about an application, and I think about how it stores user settings, not the overall application configuration, but specific settings to me, that I've gone into the app, I've gone into Word, gone into Calculator, whatever, and I customize things. Those customizations really go into possible places on the operating system. They can go to somewhere on the file system, or they can kind of go to the registry. And that's going to be that HKey current user, really what the NTUs.dat gets read into when you log on. So really the only two places it can write any customizations. And this again would be part of your user profile, and there's like app data sections, which is really where applications should write. So there's two places the app can store my customizations. What UEV does is it's basically going to intercept these. The intercept is a very strong word. What UEV actually does is I create templates. And what I do is for each application, UEV isn't virtualizing the entire profile. I tell it, hey, I want you to virtualize the settings for these particular applications. These are the ones I care about, these applications. Office, Link, Internet Explorer, the desktop, ease of use settings. But don't care about iTunes, don't care about Zoom, don't care about WinZip. You tell it the applications you care about. And I tell it about those through templates. And the template says, well, this is the application. This is the process that I need to look out for, the file name, calc.exe, winword.exe, that lets me know the app's starting. And then these are the locations where settings are stored. These registry locations, these file system locations. So it knows what it needs to look out for, what it needs to capture. And it saves each application's individual settings as a package settings file. And it's actually going to store these on a file share. So there's no server infrastructure for UEV. All I need is a file share. There is a UEV agent I install on each machine, which you register the templates with so it knows what apps to look for. And then it's actually going to store settings packages for each app. It's probably easier to really just see what it does. So I have my remote file share. /S packages, and each user would have their own subfolder where their packages are going to be stored. It can also be part of their Active Directory home share. That would be another option. So this is the remote file share. and I've got my various package files. Each app has its own package file. I have the UEV agent, and this runs as a service. So what happens now is, I fire up an application. So let's just say I fire up Word. UEV is sitting there watching, and it says, hey look, Word is trying to start. It compares that to a list of processes that it's supposed to be watching out for. And it says, Word, when Word.exe, yes, that's something I am virtualizing the settings for. So it hooks itself into Word. So this process is starting, and it hooks itself into it. And it stops it. It doesn't let it complete the startup. Because now what it says is, well, I need to go and get the latest settings for that. So we're using a file share to store those package settings files. But also, we have a local cache, so we're using offline files to actually have a local cache copy of these package settings. So what it's going to do is it's going to say, okay, is there any difference between the locally cached version of the package settings file for Word than the one on the remote server? If there is, then let's do a quick synchronization between them to make sure my client-side cached version is up to date. So it does that. So now I know I have the package settings file for Word. And remember, all that does is it has registry and file settings that relate to that application for Word. It then takes the settings and applies them to my local operating system. So it applies them to the users area on the file system. It applies them to the HKey current user, software, Microsoft Word, whatever, in the registry. So now on this operating system, maybe I've never logged on before, but it quickly populates the areas that that application, Word, uses to store its configurations. So now my local operating system has all my customizations in the normal file system and registry locations. So it's done. So now the UEV agent says, okay, I've got everything in place, go again. The application starts, and it reads in from where it normally expects to have the settings stored. And they're all there. So it runs very, very happily, all good. When I close the application, UEV is hooked into the process, remember? So it detects, hey, the process has stopped. It goes back to the registry in the file system, recollects all the settings for that application, writes them into that settings package for Word, and then synchronizes it back up to the file share. So if I log onto a second machine and started Word, bang. And again, it's happening when the app starts and when it stops. Same for Internet Explorer. For the desktop settings, for ease of access, that happens when I log on or log off. It happens when I connect or disconnect, or when I lock or unlock. So again, it's still faster than growing profiles. The other thing it does do is the first time I launch Word, it actually looks at, well, what are the settings for that app in the registry and file system? And in this settings package, it kind of keeps a version of the original settings for all time. And then all my new stuff, every time I change it, it gets written into this part. So let's say I've ruined Word so badly, it doesn't start anymore, I've corrupted it. Well, normally I would have had to kind of delete my whole profile. Well, now I can roll back just a specific UEV settings package. So I'm going to say, hey, for Word, I need you to roll back to those original settings. So there's a PowerShell command to actually restore those UEV settings back. And then the next time I start Word, it's going to use these. So I'm back to that default configuration the first time I ever started it before I did any customizations. So that, at a very high level, is what UEV is doing. Hopefully this really shows that there's nothing, the application knows nothing about it. I'm not virtualizing the application, I'm not changing the application. All that UEV is doing is when I start the app, it stops it starting for a second, so it can go and check, hey, is there a settings package for this app? Is it saying I'm supposed to be dealing with? Is there a settings package? If there is, hey, apply the settings to the local, whatever operating system I'm starting Word on, apply the registry and file system customizations for that app, and then let it start. And then the app is just reading as it would on a normal operating system. So So this UEV agent could be running on a VDI box, on a session host, on my local machine. This runs on Windows 7, Windows 8, 2008 R2 RDS, Windows Server 8 RDS. And because I'm virtualizing each app separately, it can travel between Word running on 7, 8, RDS. It doesn't matter. So I've now got that much more flexibility and sort of mobility between different operating systems. This is all based on these templates that tell me the locations. Office 2010, Link 2010, Notepad, Write, Internet Explorer 9 and 10, Desktop Ease of Access. They're all part, and there's a couple of others shipped with UEV. You can create your own UEV generator. It is very, very easy to use, wizard-based. And so what I want to do now is actually jump to an environment where all this is running to actually show you this in action. So in this demo portion, I have 3 different operating system environments. I have a Windows 8 client, I have a Windows 7 client, and a Windows 2008 R2 remote desktop session host. And what I actually want to do is, actually I'm just going to log on as the same user, so make sure I'm on the same for all 3 sessions. This is logged on as the same user. So all 3 are concurrently logged on. And what I want to do is firstly show the sort of user experience moving between an application, and then actually show you some of what's going on behind the scenes. So the most obvious one is I'm going to start off with Calculator. So very, very basic. And Calculator is one of those built-in applications I was talking about. So we have Calculator, sort of Notepad, and WordPad as sort of built-in accessories. Internet Explorer 9 and 10. We have Windows 7 and Windows 8 sort of desktop and ease of use, and then Office 2010 and Link 2010. So if I quickly just look at the template, we can see very easily it's looking out for calc.exe to start. It tells me a maximum and minimum version number. So version 6 is the same on Windows 7 as well. And then what are the settings it needs to capture? So for Calculator, it's all stored under the software Microsoft Calc. And all of these would be under HT current user because this is a per user setting. And what I've actually got configured is a file share called UEV store. And you can see for my user, John, there's various settings packages. And these are ones that I've started. So it's gone ahead and created settings packages for each of those. So you can see I've got a Calculator settings package here. So let's actually just go ahead and we can see if I just start Calc. So currently I'm in this statistics view, but I'm going to change it to scientific and close it. And notice there the package got updated. So on close, what it did is it went and read in that registry location and saved those settings to the package. So let's jump over to my Windows 7 client. So as I start Calculator, what's actually happening is UEV is saying, hey, it's going to stop the process starting for a split second. It's going to go and check the file share, pull down the latest settings package for Calculator, apply it to the registry, and then let it start. So notice I have the same scientific view. Now I change it to Programmer and close it. So now it's copying those settings back up. So now if I go and connect to my remote desktop server and start Calc, bang, it carries through. I can just be boring, hey, I just want standard. Save it. Jump back, you can see it's just been saved. So if I went and looked at the registry right now, and I went and looked at Calc, I can see my layout is currently 0, just the default. When I actually go and launch the application, it's going to go and read that in and apply it to the registry, remember? Which is actually what I changed it to. So let me jump back over here again. to my terminal server. I don't want it to be boring. Program. So now if I launch calc, it's copied that view over. And you can see the layout changed to 2. So it actually applied the new settings to the registry, which is all the application is reading from. That's all it has to do. If I change it to scientific and closed it, all it does is update the registry. So let's take something a little bit more advanced. Office. So if I launch Word, there are customizations I can make. One of the popular ones is obviously I can go in, I can change the color scheme. So I'll have the color scheme of black, for example. I close Word. And now I'm going to go and launch Word on my remote desktop server. And it's black. I can change it to, so I could change the dictionary. There's all different places it's actually looking to get all these settings. But the key thing is, notice I'm not logging off, I'm not logging in each time. All I have to do is just launch these. And those settings will follow me, no matter what I do. So that's great. So they're all the settings that are part of what Microsoft provide. What about if I'm doing something different? So Microsoft also provide this UEV generator tool. So I can create a new settings location template. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to browse to find something I want to create a template for. So I'm going to create one for Magic ISO. So I select the name of the executable, I can pass any command line arguments, working folder. And what it's going to do is it's going to launch it and it's going to look at, well, where is it going to read in its settings? So now it started this discovery and in my other window it actually fired off the app. So now I just need to close it. And it discovered it and it found the correct registry location. So by looking at what the application hooked into at the file system and registry level, that is user areas, it could find those out. I can change, do I only want this to work across version 5.5, which would add a major and a minor version to the template, or maybe I'm saying, well actually, it works across any version 5.1, 0.2, 0.3, whatever. Now I go and create the template, and I'm just going to go and create it in my documents folder. Actually, no, I won't. In the temp folder, I actually already created one earlier, but we'll save over it. And I close. And now I can actually go and open up that template file that it just created. And there we go. It's put in where the settings are, the major version of the file and product. And now I would just read that into my UEV agent. So I could do that with the PowerShell, or I can create a file share where I store all my templates, and every 24 hours the agent will go and poll that and automatically read them in. So I mean, that's UEV. I mean, that's really how simple it is. It's not doing anything amazingly complicated. It's doing nothing to the application. It's simply saying, hey, just wait a second. When it detects as an application that it's managing the settings for, don't start up yet. Let me go and get the latest settings. It applies it to the operating system and then lets the app start. And then when it closes, it captures them again and saves them off. So really the only infrastructure we're having is a file share and then deploying the UEV agent itself, which you can deploy with sort of any enterprise software distribution software, group policy, really anything. So that's UEV. Thank you.